नूर बिहारी जू की जय। श्री गोविंद गोपीनाथ मदन मोहन जू की जय। नित्य लीला प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अश्वतर शत शिशिमार भक्ति वेदांत नारायण गोसाई महाराज श्री गुरुदेव की जय। नित्य लीला प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अश्वतर शत शिशिमार श्री भक्ति वेदांत वामन गोसाई महाराज की जय। नित्य लीला प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अश्वतर शत शिशिमार श्री भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। नित्य प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अशतर शतस्मर भक्ति प्रज्ञान केशव गोसाई महाराज की जय। नित्य प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अशतर शतस्मर शिल भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोसाई प्रभु। नित्य सरस्वती की जय। नित्य प्रविष्ट शिल सच्चिदानंद भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय। नित्य प्रविष्ट वैष्णव सार्वभौम शिल जगन्नाथ दास बाबा जी महाराज की जय। श्री रूपानुगौर्य गुरु वर्ग की जय। श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भट्टदास रघुनाथ शारद गोसाई प्रभु की जय। श्री स्वरूप दामोदर राय रामानंदारी श्री गौर प्रसाद वृंद की जय। नाम अक्षय श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल व्रज मंडल मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय। सर्व अभिष्ट प्रदत्त गिरिराज महाराज की जय। श्री राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड की जय। श्री मुन देवी गंगा देवी की जय। श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय। श्री भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री पूर्णमासी गोमाय की जय। श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय। श्री what is it? अपरा एकादशी तिथि की जय। एकादशी तिथि पालन करी भक्त वृंद की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। श्री उद्धव गीता की जय। श्री हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। ओम ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय राधिकाय प्रियात्मने श्रीमद्भक्तिवेदान्त नारायणेति नामिने। नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरतिशे नमः। गुरुवे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकाय तदालये कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तद्भक्ताय नमो नमः। यं प्रव्रजन्तमनुपेतमपेतकृत्यां द्वैपायनो विरहकातर आजुहाव पुत्रेति तन्मयतया तरवोऽभिनेदुस्तं सर्वभूत हृदया मुनिमानतोऽस्मि। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। शृण्वतं स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तन हृदन्तस्थो ह्यभद्राणि। Oh shoot, is there sound? Yeah, there is. Vidunoti suritsatam nashta nityang bhagavata sevaya bhagavatuttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki tavaivasmi na jivami tvaya vina iti vigyaya radhe tvam nayamang charanantikam भक्त्या विहीना अपराधलक्षाय क्षिप्ताष्टकामादितरङ्गमध्ये कृपामयि त्वां शरणं प्रपन्ना वृन्दे नमस्ते चरणारविन्दं Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hari Bol, everybody. Dandavat Pranams Pradyumna Prabhu and Ganga Mataji, Suevi Didi, and Satya Mataji. Hare Krishna. And also pranams to Indira Mataji, who will be watching later on. So this time I actually am live. This is not a pre-recorded video. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to record a video yesterday, but it looks like my internet connection is really good right now. So anyways, I'm going to be checking back quite often to see, because it drops here a lot and with my mobile data. So all right, so we're reading what we began, the Ila Gita, I think it's called. Oh, and just one thing, tomorrow at the same time, I'm going to give a video for Chaitanya Bhagavat. I'm commencing finally on the disappearance day of Śrīla Vrindavan Das Ṭhākura. I'm commencing Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat. Yeah, I read half of the first chapter. I already made the recording for it. I just need to edit the video a little bit, and yeah. But I'm excited to be starting that now finally. Alright, so where are we? I'm going to just read all the translations up to verse 27 where we read yesterday. The Song of the Avanti Brahman. Oh yes, Sudevi Didi, it's actually in Vrindavan. It is his disappearance. Śrīla Vrindavan Das Ṭhākura's disappearance day is today, but here in Kolkata and in Navadip, it's tomorrow. So, actually, I'm not sure if you've already seen this, but on my YouTube channel, where is it? My personal YouTube channel. If you just go to the front page, there's this Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat forward and life sketch of Śrīla Vrindavan Das Ṭhākura. So I made a video 3 weeks ago where I read Śrīla Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Thakur's life sketch that he gave about Vrindavan Das Ṭhākura. So if you want to watch that today, just because it's today in Vrindavan, you can. And then tomorrow morning, you'll get the first chapter of, yeah. All right. So text 1. Shukadeva Gosvāmī said, Lord Mukunda, and this chapter is called, what is it? Anyways, it's called the Ila Gita, I think. It's chapter 17, is it? Anyways. Shukadeva Gosvāmī said, Lord Mukunda, the foremost of Dasharthas, at the request of the exalted devotee Uddhava, first praised his servant's fine statements. The Lord, whose pastimes are meditated upon by great sages, then replied. What was Uddhava's statements? Let's see. Okay, so the statements that it's being referred to here, Uddhava said, O most eloquent speaker, kindly explain these statements so that I may properly understand them. O souls, one's acquired nature in material life is very strong. Because of this, it is very difficult for even learned men to tolerate the offenses committed against them by ignorant people. I think that only your devotees, who are fixed in your loving service, are able to tolerate such offenses. Because before that, sorry, I keep on going back. Before that, Krishna was talking about O Uddhava, do not indulge in sense gratification with your blunt material senses. Instead, understand how the illusion based on the dualities of material existence prevents one from realizing the self. A devotee who actually desires to attain perfection in this very life should tolerate all kinds of difficulties. Even when insulted, ridiculed, or even beaten or confined by miscreants, or when spat upon or urinated upon by ignorant fools, with intelligence fixed in devotional service, he should remain undisturbed. So then Uddhava says, O most eloquent speaker, please explain this so that I may properly understand them. It is very difficult for even learned men to tolerate offenses committed against them by ignorant people. I think that only your devotees who are fixed in your loving service are able to touch offenses that are committed to themselves. And then, so then the Lord, whose pastimes are meditated upon by great sages, now responded to Uddhava. The Supreme Lord said, O disciple of Brihaspati, rare is the saintly person in this world who is capable of pacifying his mind after it has been agitated by the harsh words of a miscreant. The harsh and insulting words hurled by the lowest among men cause more pain than the sharp arrows that penetrate one's chest during a battle. My dear Uddhava, please listen attentively as I narrate a most pious history that the compilers of the Puranas have narrated in this regard. Once there was a sannyasi who was insulted in many ways by sinful men. However, with determination, he remembered that he was suffering the results of his previous actions. I shall now narrate to you his story and that which he spoke. Long ago, in the country of there lived a Brahman who was wealthy and endowed with great opulence. He engaged in farming and commerce, but he was very miserly, lusty, greedy, and prone to anger. In his home, which was devoid of religiosity and any reasonable comfort, no one was given respect, be they family members or guests. Not only was the Brahman miserly toward others, he didn't even grant his own body sufficient gratification. Because he was so callous and stingy, his wife, children, and other relatives, and even his servants, came to hate him. Being thoroughly disgusted with him, they did not even bother to feign affection. The 5 presiding deities of the 5 family members became angry with the Brahman, who, being very frugal, protected his wealth like a yaksha, who was certainly cultivating inauspiciousness for both this life and the next, and who is totally devoid of religiosity and sense enjoyment. O magnanimous Uddhava, as a result of disregarding the demigods in this way, the Brahman gradually lost his accumulated piety and soon became bereft of his hard-earned wealth. O Uddhava, some of the wealth of that Brahman was taken away by his relatives, some by thieves, some by providence, some by the influence of time, some by ordinary men, and some by the king. At last, when all his wealth was lost, the Brahmana, who never engaged in religious practices or sense enjoyment, was totally ignored by his family. Because of this, he began to feel terrible anxiety. Being deprived of his wealth, the Brahman felt great fear and lamentation. Thereafter, while meditating upon his misfortune at great length, a strong feeling of detachment developed within him. The Brahmana spoke as follows: "Oh, what great misfortune! I simply tormented myself uselessly, working so hard to earn money that was not utilized for religiosity or material enjoyment. Generally, the wealth of misers never affords them any happiness. In this life, it simply torments them with anxiety, and when they die, it buys their ticket to hell. Just as even a trace of white leprosy spoils one's physical beauty, Even a tinge of greed destroys a person's good reputation and sullies whatever praiseworthy qualities are found in a virtuous soul. People who work very hard to earn and accumulate wealth are afraid of spending it. They are in anxiety about protecting it, and they become bewildered when it is lost. 15 desirable qualities arise because of wealth. They are theft, violence, falsehood, duplicity, lust, anger, quarrel, madness, competition, enmity, faithlessness, arrogance, and the dangers arising from the attachments to women, gambling, and intoxication. Therefore, those who desire their own benefit should give up attachments to excessive wealth, which is the mother of all. Wow, excessive wealth is the mother of all anarthas. Haribo Champakdidi. Even a man's brothers, wife, parents, and friends who appear bound to him in love can immediately break off their affectionate relationships and become enemies due to a dispute over even an insignificant sum of money. For the sake of even an insignificant amount of money, these dear ones may become agitated and angry. Within a moment, they may give up their affection and sever all ties, even up to the point of murder. Those who obtain this rare human form of life, which is desired even by the demigods, and take birth as brahmanas, are extremely fortunate. If they misuse this opportunity and fail to attain their real self-interest, they come to a most unfortunate end. After receiving this human form of life, which is the gateway to heaven and liberation, who would become attached to the accumulation of wealth, which brings with it all kinds of anarthas? One who does not give his hard wealth to those to whom he is obligated, such as the demigods, forefathers, great sages, family members, and living beings in general, is no better than a yaksha, and will certainly fall down from his position. Those who are actually intelligent are able to utilize their money, youth, and strength to achieve perfection. Unfortunately, I have feverishly squandered these assets in the useless endeavor for accumulating wealth. Now that I have become an old man, it is too late for me to do anything auspicious. Why should an intelligent person suffer because of his useless efforts to accumulate wealth? Indeed, everyone appears to be bewildered by someone's illness. For one who is about to die, this is a verse that we ended with yesterday. For one who is about to, what is the use of wealth, sense gratification, or any such thing? And what is the use of other persons who may offer them, which simply cause one to repeatedly take birth in this world? Okay, so we'll continue from this point on, verse 28. Nuname bhagavans tushta sarvadeva mayo hari yena nitto dasham etam nirvedaschatmana plava. Sri Hari, who is the Lord of the demigods, must have been pleased with me. It is by his mercy that I have attained this present state of suffering and have thus developed a sense of detachment, which is the boat that will carry me across the ocean of material existence. Sārārtha-darśinī by Śrīla Viśvanātha Cakravartī Ṭhākura. When the Brahmana realized that his suffering condition enabled him to become detached, he became joyful, understanding that his so-called misfortune actually the Lord's special mercy. Such detachment from materialistic life is a sure symptom of the Lord's causeless mercy, and the Brahman considered it to be the boat for crossing over the ocean of material existence. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya by Śrīla Bhaktisiddhānta Sarasvatī Gosvāmī Prabhupāda. The Brahmana thought. The demigods are empowered to award their worshippers varieties of worldly and heavenly senses. Therefore, they are only givers of imperfect benediction. Now that all my assets have been snatched away, I think that the Almighty Lord, who is my real benefactor, has mercifully given me relief from the struggle for existence that characterizes life in the material world. Now I have become detached from the four objectives of life, such as religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. These four objectives which are sought after by less intelligent people. Haribo, Mithun. How's it go? And Raseshwari Mataji, she wasn't able to join because she had some guests over, but she'll be watching later on. So pranams to you, Raseshwari Mataji, whenever you watch this. Soham kalavasheshena shoshayishengamatmana apramatto kila svarte yadisyat siddhayatmani. If I have some more time to live, then I will perform austerities while subsisting upon the bare minimum of food. Without further bewilderment, I will execute that which is actually in my self-interest, and thus remain self-satisfied. Sārārtha-darśinī. The Brahmana was eager to finish his life of material enjoyment at any cost. He thought that if he could spend the rest of his life thinking of the Lord's lotus feet, which are the cause of all self-interest, then his perfection would be guaranteed. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The Avanti Brahman considered that it is useless to aspire for advancement of religiosity, economic development, and sense gratification, and also futile to try and rid oneself of all desires for material enjoyment by performing austerities. He thought, to become freed from the materialistic mentality of achieving the perfection of religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, I must take shelter of devotional service to the Lord. Tatra mam anumoderan devastri bhuvaneshvara muhurtena brahmalokam khatvanga samasadhayat. May the demigods, who are the presiding deities of the worlds, bestow their mercy upon me. After all, Maharaj Khatvanga was able to attain Vaikuntha in just a moment. Sārārtha-darśinī. The Avanti Brahman considered that if the demigods headed by Indra approved of his intention, then they will no longer create obstacles for him. Being near the end of his life, he carefully considered what he could do for his ultimate welfare, and while doing so, he thought of King Khatvanga, who went back to Godhead simply after a moment's engagement in Krishna consciousness. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. King Khatvanga, who had fought on behalf of the demigods, attains the ultimate goal of life within a moment by renouncing all desires for religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. The mendicant Brahman from Avanti prayed to the demigods who manage the universal affairs for the benediction of engagement in the He prayed to the demigods who manage the universal affairs for the benediction of engagement in the devotional service of Lord Krishna. So now Krishna continues. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Ityabhi Preta Manasa Hyodvijasattama Unmocha Hridaya Granthin Shanto Bhikshur Abhun Muni. Lord Shri Krishna continued, having made up his mind in this way, the exalted Avanti Brahman cut asunder the knots of material attachment within his heart. In this way he became a self-satisfied mendicant in the renounced order of life. Sārārtha-darśinī. The phrase Hridaya Granthin means the knots in the heart. The Brahman was able to unite these knots. The the Brahman was able to untie these knots in the heart. What are these knots? They are in the form of the misconception, I am this body and everything in relation to this body is mine. These are the knots in the heart, so he's able to untie these. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The most fortunate Brahmana from Avanti became a Tridandi sannyasi, devotee of the Supreme Lord, by cutting the knots of desires for material enjoyment and liberation that had existed within his heart. At that time, the following verses began to appear in his heart. And this is, which chapter is these, the verses that we went through in chapter 20. Right now, what chapter? We're on chapter 23, so 3 chapters ago, verses 27 to 30. So these verses began to appear in his heart. Jata shraddha matkatasu nirvina sarvakarmasu veda dukhatmakan kaman parityaga pyanishvara tato bhajetamam prita shraddhalur drita nishchaya dushyamanashtata kaman dukho darkanks chagarhayan proktena bhakti yogena bhajato mahsakrin mune kama hridaya nashyanti sarve mai hridistite vidyate hridaya grantish chidyante sarva shankshaya kshiyante chasya karmani mai drishte kilatmani. The translation is, having awakened faith in the narrations of my glories, being disgusted with all kinds of material activities, knowing that all varieties of sense gratification lead to misery, but still being unable to renounce all sense enjoyment, my devotee should remain satisfied and worship me with great faith and conviction. Even though he is sometimes engaged in sense enjoyment, my devotee knows that this will lead to a miserable result. And so he really repents such activities. When an intelligent devotee constantly engages in my loving devotional service as prescribed by me, his heart becomes firmly situated in me. Thus, all material desires within the heart are soon destroyed. When a living entity directly sees me, who is the indwelling supersoul of all living entities, then all his false ego, doubts, and reactions of karma are at once destroyed. Sachachara mahim etan samyatatmendriya nila Pikshartam nagara graman asango lakshito vishat. He wandered throughout the world, controlling his senses, mind, and intelligence. To beg alms, he traveled alone through numerous towns and villages, hiding his true spiritual position so that he was not recognized by others. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The Brahmana from Avanti became free from all bad association by remaining aloof from those who desire material enjoyment and liberation. He had no desire to acquire name and fame to impress others, as he began to maintain himself by begging alms from door to door. In the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 19:151, it is said, Brahmanda Brahmite Kon Bhagyavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. According to their karma, all entities are wandering throughout the universe. Some of them are being elevated to the upper planetary systems, and some are going down to the lower planetary systems. Out of many millions of wandering living entities, one who is very fortunate gets an opportunity to associate with a bona fide spiritual master by the grace of Krishna. By the mercy of both Krishna and the spiritual master, such a person receives the seed of the creeper of devotional service. The acceptance of Tridandi Sannyas is an indication of one's complete dedication to the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. The 3 rods of the sannyasi's danda indicate that his body, mind, and speech are fully engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. The engagement of one's body, mind, and speech in service of the Lord enables one to manifest all good qualities, such as forgiveness, detachment, and freedom from pride and material desires. Anyone who fully engages in the service of the Lord, following in the footsteps of the previous learned devotees, will surely attain shelter at the Lord's lotus feet. Tang vaya pravaya sambhikshun avadhutam asajjana prishtva parya bhavan bhadra bhavi bhi paribhuti bhi. O gentle Uddhav, upon seeing him as an old dirty beggar, uncultured people taunted and insulted him with many harsh words. Sārārtha-darśinī. Mischievous persons took pleasure in reproaching the old sannyasi. The word paribhutibi means various kinds of reprimands. Kechitri venum jagrihur eke patram kamandalum Pitham chaikeksha sutram cha kantam chirani kechana pradaya cha punastani darshitanya dadurmune. Some of these missed away his sannyas rod. Some took his begging bowl. Some took his deerskin asan. And some took his chanting beads. And some took his torn, ragged clothing. Sometimes they pretended to return these things only to conceal them once again. My God, what cruel people. Just trying to tease him. Sārārtha-darśinī. Someone took away his sannyas rod, and when that person was about to return it, someone else snatched it away. In this way, people mistreated the Brahman from Avanti. Anam cha bhaiksha sampannam bunjanasya sarittate mutrayanti cha papishta shtivantyasya cha murdhani. When the Brahman would sit down by the side of a river to eat the food that he had collected by begging, sinful people would come and pass urine on it and then spit his head. Jesus Christ! Sārārtha-darśinī. These wicked people urinated on his food and spat on his head. My God! That's so... Śrīla Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes in that kirtan, what is it? Gurudev Kabe Tava Karuna Prakashe. He's praying that when will I cry out, Ha Gauranga, and fall onto the ground, and then Amare Vishay Pagala Bolia Angete Dibe Duli. And people seeing me, thinking me to be a crazy person, will kick dust at me. This is a whole other level though. But yeah, Śrīla Bhaktivinoda Thakur is praying to be in that state where people will throw dust, that will kick dust at him. One second. Hari Bol Prajuna Prabhu. Yatta vacham vachayanti tarayanti na bhakti chet tarjayantya pare vagbhi stena yam iti vadina pidnanti rajvatam kechid badyatam iti. What's badyatam mean? Badnanti. Although he had taken a vow of silence, foolish people would try to make him speak, and utter a word, they would beat him with sticks. There were others who would say, "This man is a thief," and then they would tie him up with a rope. Wow. Shipantyeke vajananta esha dharma dvaja shata kshina vitta imam vritim agrahitsva janojita. They would insult him by saying, "This man is a hypocrite and a cheat. He lost all his money, and so his family rejected him. Now he has put on the garb of a sannyasi just to fill his belly." Sārārtha-darśinī. Some people said, "This man is a hypocrite. He earns his livelihood by showing off his sannyas danda.
He is a cheater and deceives innocent people. He is just like a saint because he lost all his money. Aho isha mahasaro dhritiman giriradiva monena sadhayatyartham bhakavad dridhanishchaya. Ityeke vintyenam eke durvatayanti cha tang babandhur nirurudur yatha krida nakam dvijam. Some would ridicule him by saying, just see how this powerful sage is as steadfast as the Himalayan mountains. While remaining silent, he is pursuing his goal with great determination like a duck. Others passed foul air on him, and some bound him with rope and kept him captive like a pet animal. Sārārtha-darśinī. Some people would, I remember coming across this word before, but I forgot. Facetiously. Okay, facetious means treating serious issues with deliberately inappropriate humor. Flippant. A facetious remark. Okay, got it. Some people would facetiously say that the Brahman was very powerful and unwavering like a mountain. Some people passed fire in front of his mouth. Oh my God, yuck. Others bound him with rope and threw him into a dungeon, just as one puts a parrot in a cage. Oh my God. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. As a result of giving up false pride, one acquires the quality of tolerance. Due to their deceitful mentality, non-devotees are always prone to attack the surrendered devotees of the Supreme Lord in various ways. Only those who cultivate the quality of humility, feeling themselves to be lower than the straw in the street, refuse to become entangled by engagement in gross or subtle material enjoyment. Evam sa bhautikam dukkam daivikam Evam sa bhautikam dukkam daivikam daihikam chayat bhoktavyam atmanodishtam praptam abhudyata. In this way, the Brahman repeatedly suffered the threefold material miseries, adhyatmika, adhibhautika, and adhidaivika, understanding them to be allotted to him by providence, and therefore unavoidable. Sārārtha-darśinī. Adhibhautika miseries are those caused by other living entities. Adhyatmika miseries are those caused by one's own body and mind. And adhidaivika miseries are those caused by the demigods who can control the adhidaivika miseries are those caused by the demigods who control the forces of nature, such as heat and cold. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The conditioned soul identifies with his material, and because of this misconception, it is very difficult for him to tolerate the miserable conditions of material existence. The threefold miseries can be tolerated only by one who has taken shelter at the lotus feet of Sri Nityananda Prabhu, the exalted elder brother of the most magnanimous Sri Chaitanya, who is none different from the son of the king of Braj. Those who are endeavoring to remain fixed in devotional service to the Lord do not become agitated by the words and actions of atheists, because they know that the non-devotee's envy is a natural manifestation of their conditional life. Understanding that the atheists are acting helplessly under the control of material nature, they consider it their duty to forgive them. That Tridandi sannyasi of Avanti could realize these principles within himself as a result of his sincere surrender to the Lord. He could realize that these principles within himself are a result of his sincere surrender to the Lord. Paribhuta imam gatham agayata naradhamai patayarbi swadharmasto dhritamastaya satvikam. Even though low-class men ridiculed him in various ways in the hopes of making him fall down from his position, he remained steadfast in his determination. Keeping himself fixed in the mode of goodness, he began singing this song. Sārārtha-darśinī. Those who were the lowest of mankind tried their best to deviate the Avanti Brahman from his determination. They tried to deviate the Avanti Brahman from his determination to remain in Krishna consciousness. All such attempts had no effect, however, because he remained firmly fixed in his resolve while singing the song that is recorded in the following verses. The phrase Sattvikim Dhriti is explained in Bhagavad Gita 18:33. Dhrityaya dharayate mana pranendriya kriya yogena vyabhicharinya dhritisa partha sattviki. O son of Pritha, that determination which is unbreakable, which is sustained with steadfastness by yoga practice, and which thus controls the activities of the mind, life, and senses, is determination in the mode of goodness. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. Those who are envious of the Lord's devotees are certainly the lowest men and are destined to traverse the path to hell in the near future. Indeed, atheists take pleasure in distributing and disturbing the devotees, either by jeering at them or even by becoming violent. In spite of all such torments, however, the devotees remain tolerant, being determined to stay fixed in the mode of goodness, as advised by the Lord. As described by Śrīla Rupa Gosvāmī in Sri Upadeshamrita verse 1, Vacho vegam manasakroda vegam, jiva vegam udara upasta vegam, etan vegan yo vishaheta dhira, sarvam apimam pritavim sashishyat. A sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the actions of angers, the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals, that person is qualified to make disciples all over the world. Okay, now the Brahman is going to... now he's starting. Oh, God, I... really starting to fall asleep. Okay. Dveja Uvacha. I think this is called the Aila Gita, if I remember correctly. Let me just make sure everything's running okay. Looks like it. Nayam jano me sukha dukkha hetur na devatatma graha karma kala mana param karanama mananti sangsara chakram parivartayedyat. The Brahmana said, "These people are not the cause of my happiness. Neither are the demigods, my own body, the positions of the planets, my karma, or time. Rather, it is the mind alone that causes happiness and distress and perpetuates one's bondage to the vicious cycle of repeated birth and death." After Sārārtha-darśinī, after careful deliberation, the Avanti Brahman realized that it was not actually the miscreants who were the cause of his distress. Did he think that maybe they were harassing him under the instigation of someone else? The answer is given in this verse. Neither the demigods, the body, nor the planets are causing me distress. It is the mind that is the actual cause of one's happiness and distress. It is stated in the Vedas that it is the mind that sees, hears, and makes one move here and there. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. Those who are averse to the service of the Supreme Lord must live within the cycle of repeated birth and death. Ishvara sarvabhutanam hriddeshe arjuna tishtati brahmayan sarvabhutani yantra rudhani mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities, who are seated as if on a machine made of the material energy. It's Bhagavad Gita 1861. According to the purport of this verse from the Bhagavad Gita, mental speculators must wander about in the cycle of human of birth and death, driven by the mind under the direction of the Supreme Lord. The wheel of time causes a living entity, who is the knower of the field of activities, to experience the changing nature of material existence. The Avanti Brahman understood his mind alone to be the source of all inauspiciousness, despite the fact that the miscreants, the demigods, planets, one's karma, and time are no doubt apparent causes. In this regard, one can carefully consider this verse. Anyar hridayaman morman vrindavan mani vani eka kori jani taha tomar padadvai koraho jadi udoy tabe tomar purna kripa mani. For most people, the mind and heart are one. But because my mind is never separated from Vrindavan, I consider my mind and Vrindavan to be one. My mind is already Vrindavan, and since you like Vrindavan, will you please place your lotus feet there? I would deem that your full mercy. That is from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 13.137. Oh God, right. 1 second. Manogunan vaisrijate baliyas tatascha karmani vilakshanani shuklani krishnanyatalohitani tevya savarna sritayo bhavanti. The powerful minds manifest the functions of the modes of nature, from which evolve the activities of the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. From the interact modes of nature, the various species of life evolve. Sārārtha-darśinī. Hey look, we just made it to 75%. We're 3/4 done with Uddhava-gita. Sārārtha-darśinī. The mind is habituated to hankering after beautiful women and wealth. Even if one understands the fault of engaging in earning money for sense gratification, the mind will stubbornly insist that without wealth, even religious rituals cannot be properly performed. After all, it takes money to procure flower garlands, ghee, and sandalwood paste. In this way, the mind drives one on and on in the feverish search for money. The combination of the three modes of material natures awards one a material body, whereas one sometimes identifies himself as being in a high status of life, sometimes in a low status, and sometimes or somewhere in between. These conceptions are material designations generated from the modes of nature, and they arrange themselves according to the tendency of the conditioned soul. Oh my God. Whoa, I don't know why I said conditioned soul there. I'm starting to fall asleep. I need to stand up. These conceptions are material designations generated from the modes of nature, and they arrange according to the tendency of the powerful minds to enjoy temporary sense gratification. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. The materially absorbed mind of the conditioned souls who are averse to Lord Krishna's devotional service is under the influence of the three material qualities. When the conditioned soul is engrossed in the mode of goodness, he considers the cultivation of knowledge and his reputation as an honest man, as all important. Considers his reputation and his cultivation of knowledge as all important. When absorbed in the mode of passion, one's attachments to family and social position become prominent. And when one is immersed in the mode of ignorance, one simply thinks that the gratification of his senses is the be-all of his existence. All such conceptions of piety, impiety, a mixture of both, all of these are products of the mind. Under the influence of the material modes, one sometimes identifies oneself as a demigod, a king, a rich capitalist, a wise scholar, and so on. These bodily conceptions are illusions born from the mental qualities. whether the materially contaminated mind is absorbed in the mode of an enjoyer or the mode of a renunciate. Whether the material contaminated mind is absorbed in the mode of an enjoyer or the mood of a renunciate. In either case, the spirit soul forgets his constitutional existence. I'm gonna go in the other. No, I only have a few minutes left, so I think I can make it. Sorry, guys. You've been very tolerant of my falling asleep. I'm standing up now, though, just so that the last minute. Aniha atmana manasa samihata hiran. I'm sorry. Aniha atma manasa samihata hiranmayo mat saka ud vichaste manasvalingam parigrihya kamam jusham nibaddho gunasangato so. Although he is present with me in this body, the Supersoul is not entangled because he exists eternally beyond the darkness of ignorance, and thus does not identify with the material body and mind. As my well-wishing friend, he simply witnesses my activities, remaining neutral. On the other hand, I, the minute spirit soul, identify the mind, which is like a mirror reflecting external reality, as my very self. In this way, I am engaged in attempting to enjoy the objects of the senses under the dictation of the three modes of material nature. Sārārtha-darśinī. Does this mean that only the mind suffers the material existence and not the soul? The answer is no. There are two souls within the material body. One is a super who is untouched by the mind's influence, and the other is the infinitesimal spirit soul, who is under the influence of the materially absorbed mind. Although the Supersoul is present within the body as the controller of the mind, he is unaffected by its functions because he is full of transcendental knowledge and the master of unlimited spiritual energies. He is independent, and he is the best friend of the spirit soul. His knowledge never deteriorates, as he observes everything as a witness. On the other hand, the spirit soul accepts the subtle of the mind, intelligence, and false ego as a self, becomes conditioned by the mind and its resultant actions, and remains entangled in the bodily concept of life while trying to enjoy the objects of the senses. Due to the illusion created by the mind, the spirit soul suffers while remaining in material existence. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. If the soul comes to understand that dependence on the mind simply produces misery, and is informed that service to Lord Hari is his constitutional position, the desire for material enjoyment or for renunciation of material activities gradually diminishes. To act in our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead is certainly the constitutional duty of the spirit soul. When the spirit soul gives up his constitutional engagement and becomes conditioned by the external energy of the Lord, he remains engrossed in contemplating the so-called happiness of temporary sense gratification, not realizing its insignificance. When one advances on the path of cultivation of spiritual knowledge, lending submissive oral reception to the transcendental sound vibration, he can understand the purports of the verse beginning with Dva Suparna. It is only after accepting the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the object of the five types of rati that one can distance himself from the influence of the three modes of material nature by controlling the turbulent mind. Sri Gaurasundar instructed that the service of the Supreme Transcendental Personality, Sri Krishna, as described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, is the fifth dimension of human existence to be cultivated after finishing all aspiration for attaining the perfection in Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. The subtle body is dissolved at the time of perfection, and this is technically known as Vastu Siddhi. At this time, one becomes situated on the platform of pure Krishna consciousness under the direction of the pure devotees of the Lord, thus enabling him to develop his particular loving relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anam swadharmo niyamo yamascha shrutam cha karmani cha sarvatani sarve mayo sarve mano nigraha lakshananta sarvo hi paro hi yogo manasa samadhi. I have to stand up again. Okay. Giving and charity, performing prescribed duties, the observance of regulative principles, hearing from the scriptures, pious works, and purifying vows all have as their final aim the subduing of the mind. Indeed, concentration of the mind on the Supreme is the goal of yoga. Sārārtha-darśinī. To make spiritual advancement, it is essential to control the mind, which creates many obstacles if allowed to roam freely. Activities such as giving charity are performed with the aim of controlling the mind. Indeed, the ultimate fruit of all kinds of sadhana is to regulate the mind. To control the mind is the goal of all types of yoga practice. Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. Pious such as giving charity, fulfilling one's occupational duties, controlling the mind, controlling the senses, studying the Vedas, observing religious vows, and so on, are aimed at the purifying and controlling the mind. Controlling the mind by meditation is essential because when the mind is undisturbed, one can gradually realize the temporary nature of even pious activities that one becomes determined to act on the transcendental platform. Because karma yoga, hatha yoga, jnana yoga, and raja yoga are materialistically conceived, they do not award one factual understanding of the absolute truth. Okay, I think we can do this verse and end here. Samahitam yasya mana prashantam tanadibir kim vadatasya krityam asamyatam yasya mano vinashyar tanadibhisched aparam kimebhihi. If one's mind is perfectly controlled, what is the need for performing ritualistic activities? What is the need, if one's mind is controlled, then what is the need for performing ritualistic activities and pious works such as giving and charity? If one's mind remains uncontrolled, being merged in ignorance, of what use are these activities for him? This is an interesting verse. Sārārtha. Learned transcendentalists give utmost importance to controlling the mind. If the mind is controlled, what is the use of engaging in the various processes that are meant to control it? And if, in spite of performing many religious activities, the mind is still not controlled, what is the use of performing all those activities? Okay, Gauḍīya Bhāṣya. In this connection, one should consider this verse from the Narad Pancharatra. Aradito yadi haris tapasa tatakim. Aradito yadi haris tapasa tatakim. Naradito yadi haris tapasa tatakim. Antar bahir yadi haris tapasa tatakim. Nantar bahir yadi haris tapasa tatakim. If one is worshipping Lord Hari, what is the use of performing extraneous penances? And if one is not worshipping Lord Hari, no such penances will save one. If one can understand that Lord Hari is all-pervading, within and without, what is the need of performing penances? And if one is not able to understand that Hari is all-pervading, all his penances are useless. Okay, so we end here at verse 46. Just making a note too. To verse, what was it? 27 and 40. All right. Thank you so much for bearing with me, everybody. Thank you. Sorry for putting you all through that. Oh my God. Yeah, you're very kind and patient and tolerant. Thank you so much, everybody. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. जय श्री श्री गुरु गौरांग गंधार्विक गिरिधारी श्री श्री राधा विनोद बिहारी जू की जय, श्री गोविंद गोपीनाथ मरण मोहन जू की जय, नित्य प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अश्वत रशत शिष्मार भक्ति वेदांत नारायण गोसाई महाराज श्री गुरुदेव की जय, नित्य प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अश्वत रशत शिष्मार श्री भक्ति वेदांत वामन गोसाई महाराज की जय, नित्य प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अश्वत रशत शिष्मार भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्री प्रभुपाद की जय, नित्य प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अश्वत रशत शिष्मार भक्ति प्रज्ञान केशव गोसाई महाराज की जय, नित्य प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अश्वत रशत शिष्मार भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोसाई प्रभुपाद की जय, नित्य प्रविष्ट महाभागवत श्री गोरक्षरस बाबाजी महाराज की जय, नित्य प्रविष्ट श्री सच्चिदानंद भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय, नित्य प्रविष्ट वैष्णव सार्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथ बाबाजी महाराज की जय, श्री रूपा नगौरिया गुरु वर्ग की जय, श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ, श्री जीव गोपाल भट्टदास रघुनाथ शार गोसाई प्रभु की जय, श्री स्वरूप दामोदर राय रामानंदारी श्री गौर पार्षद वृंद की जय, नाम अचय श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय, प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद, श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय, श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल व्रज मंडल वृंदावन धाम की जय, सर्व अभिष्ट प्रदात गिरिराज महाराज की जय, श्री राधा कुंद श्याम कुंड यमुना गंगा तुलसी भक्ति देवी की जय, श्री हरि नाम संकीर्तन की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय, ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, श्री उद्धव गीता की जय, श्री विश्वनाथ चाक्रवर्ती ठाकुर की जय, श्री भक्तिसिद्धांत सरस्वती गोसाई प्रभुपाद की जय, श्री अपारा एकादशी तिथि की जय, तिथि पालन करी भक्त वृंद की जय, Shri Hari Nam Sankirtan ki jai Anant. And for those of you who are in Vrindavan and some other places in the world, Shri Vrindavan Das Ṭhākura ki jai, Tadiya Shubha Tirubhav Titi ki jai, Shri Hari Nam Sankirtan ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavashacha Krishna Bhakti Pratadevi Satyavatai Namo Namaha Pancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Dandavat pranams everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I'll see you all tomorrow for Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat. Hare Krishna.